Right now, the Book of Enoch is being talked about again, with millions of people being told to read it. But almost no one is asking the question that truly matters. What kind of journey did Enoch actually make? Because this was not just a spiritual vision, not just a symbolic ascent. It was a journey, a movement through territories, through boundaries, through regions that were clearly defined. So the real question is not simply what did he see, but where did he go? What kind of world was it actually describing? In this map, we can begin to see the kind of journey he may have undertaken, toward the far reaches of the earth, toward regions described as the ends, not as abstract ideas, but as real boundaries within a much larger structure. In this book, Enoch, Terra Infinita, and the Celestial Lands, we explore that journey in detail. Not as a myth, not as a metaphor, but as a possible description of a structured world, divided into regions, separated by barriers, and far greater than what we've been taught. The Forgotten Maps of the World. Throughout time, different civilizations have left behind records that, when observed together, reveal a surprisingly consistent structure. These are not vague similarities or forced parallels. They are descriptions that appear in entirely different contexts, yet converge on a shared principle. Territory was understood as a system divided into regions. These spaces beyond mere distance were separated by clearly defined boundaries. Oceans marked frontiers, mountain ranges acted as barriers, and inaccessible zones prevented passage from one region to another. In each tradition, these elements appear as central to how the world was understood. Vedic texts described expanses organized in concentric formations, separated by oceans that defined distinct domains. In the traditions of Northern Europe, multiple realms were spoken of, connected by specific routes, often restricted. The Greeks referred to an outer ocean encircling the known lands, establishing a boundary beyond which unexplored territories began. For centuries, these accounts were grouped under the category of mythology. This classification made it easier to organize them within a familiar framework, but it also diminished their scope. In doing so, it was assumed that they describe symbolic constructions unique to each culture. However, when analyzed without that filter, the level of coherence they present introduces a clear difficulty. It becomes hard to sustain the idea that they are merely inventions. There is also an element that completely reshapes the interpretation of these records. The possibility that different human civilizations have gone through cycles of destruction and reconstruction. If that were the case, then what is now perceived as disconnected fragments could in reality be partial remains of a prior body of knowledge that did not fully survive into the present. Some elements preserved in ancient texts do not seem to belong to the time in which they were recorded. Descriptions, structures, and references that suggest a different level of understanding. Rather than anomalies, these fragments may be remnants of a much older memory, preserved only in incomplete form. From this perspective, the idea of a world organized into territories begins to take on a more concrete meaning, as a possible description of how the land itself was structured. In many of these traditions, inhabited regions are described as being enclosed by natural barriers that prevent access to other territories. Beyond those limits, there are references to zones where the environment changes significantly, both in geography and in the conditions that define it. In some cases, the presence of beings distinct from humans is even mentioned. Here, a possibility emerges that for a long time was dismissed without deeper analysis. That these descriptions are not referring to separate worlds, but to different regions of a single land, organized within a broader structure than what is currently recognized. From this, an unavoidable question arises. Why did such different cultures describe a structure of the world in such a similar way? The map presented in this work, known as Nocelli map, Terra Infinita Hyperborea, and the 9 concentric realms, offers a concrete visual form aligned with these cosmologies. The lands known to present-day humanity occupy only a small region within a much larger system of concentric domains. Surrounding them are other territories, separated by barriers that, for long periods, prevented contact between different regions. Each of these domains presents its own conditions, which could explain the differences described in ancient accounts. Within this structure, many elements found across different traditions begin to align naturally. Mountains located at the extremes cease to be abstract references and instead represent physical boundaries. Outer seas function as divisions between regions. Inaccessible routes begin to make sense as real paths toward restricted territories. Differences in climate, geography, and forms of life fit within a broader system of separated zones. This opens a second question, one that is even more unsettling. Why was a text containing such detailed descriptions of the world left out of the dominant narrative? In this way, what was long interpreted as mythology can be reconsidered from a different perspective, as partial descriptions of a territorial structure that did not fully reach the present. If these sources are preserving fragments of a more ancient cartography, then the issue does not lie in the texts themselves, but in the way they have been read. Because if the world was understood differently in the past, then what is considered complete knowledge today may only be a reduced portion of something far greater.